Elsewhere he writes that there's a relationship between a human being, what we can say in terms of the oral Torah. Obviously, a person can contribute to the body of the oral Torah. We can write new ideas, new interpretations, and we can even become part of the written Torah, because a new Megillah will be written for all the good deeds that we all do. Now, if we ask ourselves, what happens on Shavuot? Is there anything special, mystical, anything out of the ordinary that happens on Shavuot? In what sense is it a special time? Of course, it's forbidden to do work on that day. It's a special day in that sense. It's commanded to rejoice, v'samachta b'chagecha, to rejoice on that day. But there's something else too that the Sfas Emes says. On Shavuos, he says, every person receives the Torah again. Receive the Torah? We already got the Torah. Yeah, but you receive whatever Torah you're going to get that year. Hopefully each year, get new ideas, new insight, new depth of understanding. Whatever you're going to get that year, you receive it on that day. It's still the day to catch the Torah. It's still the day to receive the Torah. Elsewhere, the Sfas Emes writes that on Shavuos, we know that God spoke to Moshe. When God spoke to Moshe, it wasn't like other prophets. It was panim b'fanim. It was like ka'asher yidaber isha ve'eh. It was face to face, like one person speaks to another. That's the level of the relationship between God and Moshe, God and the 5 books of Moses. He says that revelation is in some ways stirred up again. The ability to see face to face. You know what that means? Not so much that we can have that revelation of God like we had then, but it means to be able to see our own faces, to see atzmutchem, to see your own atzmus, your own essence on that day, to see yourself. This is a day of self-revelation, of being able to appreciate who we are. Or a later Gerer Rebbe, the Beis Yisrael, writes in the name of his father that on every Shavuos, something happens which is the same as what happened on the original Shavuos. What happened on the original Shavuos? The voice of God was so tremendous and overwhelming that the Jews said, please, Moshe, you speak to God. God is too awesome for us to hear. And God says, terrific. Mi yitein v'yalav avam zeh liraoti kol yamim. I wish they would love me and fear me and be in awe of me, just like this for all of history. So comes the Beis Yisrael's father, and he said, every Shavuos, God turns to the Jewish people and he says, oh, I wish they would fear me and love me the way they did at Mount Sinai. So God makes a special prayer for us to be able to fear God. And when we stand at the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, when we stand to hear the 10 Commandments read on Shavuos, we should chuckle a little bit, we should tremble a bit. And with that, we should perhaps renew the spirit of Shavuos, the spirit of trembling and awe, which we had the very first Shavuos, on this Shavuos as well. But the question is, in what sense do we get the Torah on Shavuos? If there's an idea that the Torah never stopped its call from Sinai, and it keeps going, in what sense do we continue to get the Torah? So as Sfas Emes says, number one, we have to learn to accept what we know. To let what we know sink in a little deeper. To let what we already know become more meaningful for us. That's the first Kabbalah HaTorah, receiving of the Torah on Shavuos. The second aspect of receiving the Torah is that on Shavuos, we become the vessel that's prepared, as we've said in other webcasts, it's prepared to receive the Torah. Shavuos is that day when we get the preparation to receive further Torah thoughts. The Chidushei Harim, the grandfather of the Sfas Emes, writes that on Shavuos, God gives us the potential to receive the Torah for the rest of the year. That's Shavuos. They tell a story of a Hasidic Rebbe who every Friday night or Yontif night, they expected him at the tish, at the table, to say some words of Torah. The students sat with rapt attention, waiting for the Rebbe to say something insightful, inspiring. Came Shavuos night, he didn't say anything. So they said to him later, Rebbe, why didn't you say anything on Shavuos night? And he said, Shavuos is just the time to get ready to receive the Torah. When you're getting ready to receive the Torah, it's not time for the old Torah. The old Torah is not good enough. It's not time yet for tomorrow morning, the receiving of the Torah. Now we're just waiting to receive the Torah. That night of Shavuos, that night of learning, is a night when we're waiting to receive the new Torah for that year. So if we ask ourselves a question, did the Torah cease at Sinai? It was Sinai the end of the revelation, or just the beginning? On the one hand, Sinai is unique. On the one hand, the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu is nothing to be replicated. Lo Yasaf, it cannot continue. That was a special occasion that happened on Shavuos once upon a time. On the other hand, there are echoes. There are plenty of echoes. Lo Yasaf, it didn't stop there. The echo continues in the words of the prophets, continues in every inspirational thought that each one of us can have every single day. And it continues each Shavuos as we get that ha'ara, that wind, that breath of fresh air, that echo, that enlightenment that comes on Shavuos. And yes, the voice of Sinai can continue and it can keep going. The question is, when we hear that voice, will we hearken that voice and God will say, just like at Mount Sinai? Or will God say, Oy lahem me'elbona shel Torah, woe is unto us for the embarrassment of Torah, for Torah continues to send its echoes, and we, unfortunately, are not tuned in. We're not on the right station. I want to wish everyone Chag Kosher v'Sameach, Chag Sameach, a good Yontif, should have a good Shavuos. It should be a Shavuos in which we feel the wind, the draft, the echoes of Mount Sinai. And hopefully with that, we'll receive new ideas yet for the year to come. I'd like to thank Jason Lefkowitz of the JSL Studios here in Memphis for making this production possible. Thank you.